that moves us to our superintendent's report. So Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and our community. And we thank you so much for your support of our schools and our teachers, and we in our administration as we work through our vision. We always say we're guided by three steps, three important questions within our community and our system. That's why. That's our vision question. Our clicker's not working. Oh, there we go. Our how question, which is our mission, and our outcomes. That's our what question. And just advance it for me as I'm having problems with it. Thank you. I'll tell you when I advance it. Our strategic plan is always connected to our vision, which is the objective that every student feels loved in our schools, and our grow vision is that every student has demonstrated academic success in our schools. And we measure this by our performance goals. Our performance goals for love is our school climate goals and our teacher quality goals. Our performance goals for grow is our student achievement goals and our gifted and talented goals. You can go to the next slide, please. You'll see that we want to continue to stay focused, and a lot of things that challenge schools that we deal with within our schools, and we want to stay focused on that growth and development of our students. There's their academic, their social, emotional growth of our students in the schools. And we look at that, thank you, through our performance goals. We are, by state law, required to do 3 formative assessments throughout the year using our MAP testing. That's our measures of academic progress. We do this in the fall, winter, and spring, and our goal has always been to turn those red bars into blue bars. If we look at our fall results, you can see where we started out in the fall, the winter, and now we're in the spring. And as a result, we're not seeing those red bars move to the blue bars as we initially have shown. But what we are trying to do is really measure the growth of our students within those red bars. And one of the things that I think is important is to look at what happens during the year. You have students who may come into the 5th grade, they may be on a 1st grade level, but they're able to grow to a 3rd grade level or grow to a 4th grade level, but because they're in the 5th grade, they still don't get to what we would call that blue bar status, but they show tremendous growth. And that's what we're seeing. So I want, as we're here at the spring, again, while we've seen growth and those number of students are on grade level, again, we still are not seeing it to the degree that we are used to. But I do want to celebrate the growth that's happening within those number of students that are off level. So if we go to the next slide, I've asked our Director of Accountability, Dr. Van Holden, to come forward, just kind of explain a measure. I've always said the power's in the pivot, and if you can pivot the data, you get a different story. And when we look at what's called median growth percentiles, it tells a very unique story of what our students are able to do. These are not working for me.
If we could advance it one slide again. So our strategic plan, it's convenient that we're talking about this tonight because, of course, we have the strategic plan later on the agenda as well. But our strategic plan outlines a statistic called the conditional growth percentile. That's been in our plan now since the new plan was approved. And the conditional growth percentile, the student growth percentile, is a measure of how much a student grew compared to similar scoring students over a given period of time. Again, it's how much a student grew compared to similar scoring students. It's on a scale of 1 to 99. So every student who takes fall and spring MAP test, every student who does spring to spring, fall to winter, they get a conditional growth percentile. And that conditional growth percentile tells us, again, how much did that student grow compared to similar scoring students over the same period of time in the same subject area, the same grade level. Okay, so considering a lot of factors related to prior achievement. Now we get a score on a scale of 1 to 99. And so we know, again, how every student in the district grew compared to similar scoring students. What we then try to do is aggregate that data so we can look at how a specific class or a course or a grade level or a school, or in this case, the district did over a period of time. And the measure that we use to aggregate that data is the median conditional growth percentile. So this is where we take every single student in the district and we line them up, and we look at the array of scores that exist, and we find the exact student who's in the middle. We look for the middle student in that range of conditional growth percentiles. And again, it's a scale of 1 to 99 that we're looking at here. And what it means is, so we'll take, for example, ELA grades 2 to 5, the left-hand side of that chart, okay? And you can see that in 2021, 2022, in grades 2 to 5 in ELA, the median conditional growth percentile, or how much the middle student in that group grew compared to similar scoring students, was a 52, so slightly above where we'd expect them to be, because a 50 means that a student kept up with growth compared to similar scoring students. A 50, again, means that the student would have kept up with the growth of similar scoring students. A median conditional growth percentile of 50 would mean that the median student kept up with the growth of similar scoring students. So last year, we were at 52 in grades 2 to 5 in ELA. This year, we got to a 60 for fall to spring growth. If you look at math, last year we were at a 58, and this year we're at a 71. That 58 is an extraordinary score. The 71 somehow eclipsed that. It's a result of the phenomenal work we're seeing in our classrooms in grades 2 through 5 in mathematics, and again, outstanding work there. We then narrow it down and we look at 4th and 5th grade as well. Now, we've chose 4th and 5th grade to isolate because those are the two grade levels. We've talked about school report card ratings before. In elementary school, those are the two grade levels. In intermediate school, those are the grade levels that count for student progress on the school report card rating. So only 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders get a student progress count towards our student progress ratings. So we isolated 4th and 5th grade to kind of measure how we're doing in those grade levels, because again, when we look at student progress on SC Ready coming up here next month, we need to look specifically to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we pulled out 4th and 5th, and you can see last year in 4th and 5th grades in ELA, we were at a 51 for the median conditional growth percentile, and this year at a 56. And then in math, we went from a 56 to a 66. In our middle level grades, we don't quite see the same level of success we were seeing in grades 2 to 5, but what we see in both ELA and math is an improvement in that median conditional growth percentile, okay? So in ELA in grades 6 through 8, we went from a 52 to a 53, and in mathematics, we went from a 45 to a 49. Now, of course, our strategic plan addresses grades 2 through 8, and that's not what you see presented here tonight. We've broken it down based on the grade levels that relate to the MAP test. But again, what we're seeing there, especially in grades 2 through 5, is we're seeing our students growing far more than similar scoring students. The median student is growing far more than similar scoring students, and we're making progress over where we were at this time last year when we look at those fall to spring results. And in ELA and math in grades 6 through 8, we've made progress over where we were this time last year and looking to continue those results. This time, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Ross to continue.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. I had just wanted to show our community, our board, that our teachers are doing an amazing job. Our support staff is doing an amazing job. We set a goal that every child would grow with their peers. That's a 50. And then to eclipse that just a little bit, go to a 55 or a 56. But to get 71s and 60s and 66, that's incredible growth that's happening within our schools. And so I am just as proud of that child who received, who made it into on grade level or on level in that blue bar, but I'm very proud of those students who may have been in the 8th grade with a 2nd grade reading level, who advanced to the 6th grade. They're still not going to count for us at the end of the year, but they made tremendous growth within 1 year, and we have to celebrate that. That is more than 1 year's growth within a year, and I'm very proud of that. There are areas that we also need to grow in, and that's in our graduation rates. We're looking at closing into the year, less than 27 days left in our school year. We have now a program that looks at the grades of a student or the attendance of a student. Are they on track for graduation out of our 9GR20? And we have worked diligently with our principals to ensure that these numbers are improving. We can tell you 40% of these students are attendance issues. So as a result, We're working on our recapture to ensure that we get these seat time requirements in. But the other 42% of the students that are off level right now or not on track are for grades. And so this, as we round out the third quarter, round out the fourth quarter, is ensuring that they're working with their graduation teams to get on track. So we encourage, my team told me today that these numbers are going up, and so not to panic. So the graph doesn't make me look like I'm not going to panic, but we're consistent that we'll be on track to hit our goals. Another active measure, thank you for this, is to ensure that when students graduate, that they also graduate ready for college and career, that they are ready for their futures that are different from our past. And we will, within 2 weeks, get our WIN testing data in, and so you will see the number of students who are neither college or career ready. You will see that drop significantly. So we're excited. We will always present you our progress in our strategic plan. That allows us to pivot when we ever need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. Behind every percentage, there's a number. Behind every number, there's a name. And behind every name, there is a story. We're constantly learning those stories so that we can make difference in the numbers. So at that time, this time, I'd like to turn it over to our CFO, Ms. Madison Paul, so we can do the monthly financial updates for February.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Ross. Thank you again for inviting me here tonight to discuss the monthly financial report for the month ending February 28th, 2023. So we'll start with the revenue side. So looking here, to date, we have, through February, we've collected about $157 million. Looking at the local piece first, from the property tax standpoint, we have collected the majority of the property taxes that we will collect for this fiscal year, since real estate property taxes are due by January 15th. What is still outstanding are our vehicle taxes that are paid monthly, and those have truly been very strong this year. We've seen significant growth from a vehicle taxes standpoint and a pretty steady growth on the real estate. Additionally, we're about 67% through the year by time and also by collections if you're looking at both the local sources and our state sources. From a state standpoint, again, that is normally a more cyclical monthly amount that we receive. We will receive the homestead Tier 2 exemption and the rest of Tier 1 later in the spring. But you'll see here that we have received about half of Tier 3 at this point and expect to receive the remainder by the end of the year. Additionally, we're about a $10 million increase over the prior year at this time, so significant growth there. And then again, just from a March to June standpoint, you'll see that we will mostly be collecting from a state sources side, and our local piece will kind of taper off a little bit. If we move towards our expenditure report, so to date through February 28th, 2023. Rachel, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. Thank you. From an expenditure standpoint, we have spent about $125 million to date. So that is about 58% of our total budget. Keep in mind that our 190-day employees, so our teachers and the other staff members that work 190 days, will be paid through August 15th. So we do not we pay them throughout the whole year, even though they only work 9 months. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at the expenditure report, that we will incur expenditures for those employees after 6/30. But additionally, about a $4 million increase on the on the expenditure side over the prior year, which is still less than what our increase is on the revenue side. And again, March through June, really just steady expenditures expected as our revenue flattens. Any other questions? Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Paul.
Thank you.
And as you're aware, we submitted our annual report this year, but I would like to share, Madam Chair, members of the board, that we have printed these in a more reader-friendly format. And so these are being distributed to local businesses. It's available in the waiting rooms of all of our schools. And also with our partnership with the Lake Mary and Irmo News, we now have these being distributed. So we want to thank Communications for getting these out. These will be distributed this week within the Irmo News and Lake Murray News. So really excited about getting our information out and telling our story. As we concluded our annual report, we talked about the 3 challenges for School District 5, but each challenge gives us an opportunity. And I'd like to talk about those opportunities for to address the mental health issues with social emotional learning programs, to connect every student with a trusted adult and maximize our honors programs, and also to create a 5-year master facilities plan that provides equity and access for all students in the district. As you remember, we began our master facilities workshop, and we talked about 7 questions that we wanted to answer. We've already answered, of the 7, we're in progress of answering all of those, but 1 has already been completed, and that was, how will District 5 be organized? And we decided to move District 5 from 9 grade structures to 5 grade structures: early childhood, elementary, middle, high, and district-wide. So as a result, tonight in the superintendent's report, I would like to focus on the 3rd question, which is, what is the rezoning redistricting plan for the schools? And if we look at our current floor, current grade structure and zoning plan, you see we have a very unique grade structure model, especially in the Irmo and Dutch Fork areas, where 10 elementary schools go to 1 intermediate school for 1 year and then back out into 2 communities. And so what we would like to do is look at a strategic way of redistricting the current lines that you see here to meet the grade structure that we have just adopted. So how do we do that? We use the data. If we look back 10 years, we use the 135th day number because that's consistent. Our attendance changes daily, and so we use different points throughout the year to ensure that we have a consistent way of evaluating the data. The 135th day numbers are how we build our budget, so that's how we use those numbers, and you see it as an informational report for this meeting here. But let's go back 10 years. 25% of the in-person enrollment in 2013, 25% of the in-person enrollment was in the Chapin area schools. Dutch Fork had the largest in-person enrollment at 38%, followed by Irmo, all Irmo schools with 36%. If we look at our in-person enrollment today, 10 days later, you will see that Chapin has 39% of all in-person enrollment. Dutch Fork has 29%, and Irmo has 31%. So the Dutch Fork area went from the largest percent of in-person enrollment to the smallest percent of in-person enrollment within that 10 years. So so the question is, how do we redistrict? The proposal that we will put in is, the question is, do we build new buildings in the Chapin area, or do we redistrict back into the Dutch Fork area? The plan that I'm presenting, draft 3 of our plan, has us moving back, redistricting to recapture buildings within the Dutch Fork area. And so that blue-green line is where we will start focusing our efforts. What will the philosophy for this redistricting plan look like? It will look like this, and I would like to explain it. We take the 5 grade structures, early childhood, elementary, middle, high, and district-wide programs. We're using the data in terms of in-person enrollment and the shift that we've seen in our population over the last 10 years, and that creates this philosophy, this plan. We would ask that we add another 3K, 4K program that would be in the Chapin area, and I'll work with Dr. Harris's office on exactly which Chapin elementary, which school in Chapin that would go to. We would create 5 middle schools, and they would be fed as following. Chapin Elementary and Piney Woods Elementary would feed into Chapin Middle, which is currently Chapin Intermediate School. The building of Ballantyne would now become a Chapin Zone School. So it doesn't mean everybody in Ballantyne currently, but we would, instead of building a new building in Chapin, we would be serving the current populations of Chapin Elementary, Piney Woods Elementary, Lake Mary, all of that to be redistricted using the Ballantyne building. Certain students and families that are currently served by Ballantyne, of course, will continue to go to Ballantyne. But the lion's share of that will be rezoned into the Dutch Fork Middle feeder. And so for the second feeder of would be Ballantyne Elementary, Lake Mary Elementary, that would feed into what we would propose Spring Hill Middle, which is currently Chapin Middle School. And both of those would go to Chapin High School. H.E. Corley, Dutch Fork Elementary, River Springs Elementary, Oak Point Elementary will flow into Dutch Fork Middle, which will go to Dutch Fork High School. Seven Oaks Elementary, Lee Park Elementary, and parts of the Harbison West attendance zone. At this point, we're looking at preferably north of the I-26 area of the current Harbison West. We'll go to Crossroads Middle, which is currently Crossroads Intermediate School. Crossroads would serve 6th, 7th, and 8th. Harbison West below I-26, Nursery Road, and Irmo Elementary would go to Irmo Middle. Crossroads and Irmo would both go to Irmo High School, and Spring Hill High School would continue to serve as a magnet. In order to make this work, we would also create an alternative programs building. The Academy for Success is in Spring Hill High School's magnet. We would need every space in there to reduce the population at Chapin High School. So the Academy for Success would have to come out of Spring Hill Magnet School. We are programming where adult ed is at Irmo, so the adult education program would have to come out of Irmo High School. And we would need every square footage of Piney Woods to make this work, so the 5 program would have to come out of the Piney Woods School. As a result, if we adopt draft 3 of the rezoning redistricting plan, this philosophy, then at least one new building would have to be, we would need at least one new building, which could either be a new alternative programs building for Academy for Success, Adult Ed, and 5, or we could move those programs into the current Dutch Fork Elementary School and build a new Dutch Fork Elementary. These are just for the presentation. We would, of course, talk about this on the discussion agenda, but we want to hear from the public, your thoughts on this proposal. And so you can email us at 5yearplan@lexridge5.org. Again, this is draft 3 of a proposed redistricting draft, and we would love to hear the public's input and those questions, those feedback. They're important as we prepare for a discussion with the board. And again, those can come in at 5yearplan@lexridge5.org. And so, Madam Chair, members of the board, that's our D5 story, and I stand for any questions.
All right, do we have any questions for Dr. Ross? Ms. Huddle?
Back on the MAP scores, I guess I want to ask about a really good number and a not so good number. Right. So on the 4 to 5 or the elementary, I'm curious, like what are we doing differently that you would attribute those great numbers to? And on the flip side, I'm concerned about the middle school math. So what are we doing to try to improve those numbers?
So Ms. Huddle, great question. One of the things that we're doing differently in those two is that Dreambox learning that we've presented to you. The state is seeing great results from that across the state. We are as well. And of course, we've had that program longer in elementary. Remember, we started it in elementary before we did middle. So we are getting reports. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting with Dreambox this week to get an update on our middle school, excuse me, scores and programs. But that's definitely one thing that we are seeing and noticing.
Any more questions? Mr. Hogan?
Thank you. Dr. Ross, can you go back to the slide over the redistricting phase 3? Perfect, yeah, thank you. So looking at it with the proposed changes with potentially Spring Hill and a new location for the Academy for Success, can you remind us how many seats that'll open up in Spring Hill? And then also, is there going to be, I'm assuming that's to alleviate the potential overcrowding at Chapin, but is acceptance into Spring Hill going to be any different as far as what homeschool you're trying to come into? Can you kind of walk us through that?
So, and Dr. Harris, you can correct me where I'm wrong, but essentially, the current number of students that we have at the Academy for Success is about 121. However, we will get more capacity in that wing, but that's the current number. The goal in this plan is that you would have a Spring Hill, we're not using the word magnet, but program that would feed right in from Spring Hill Middle into Spring Hill High School. However, if we look at, and I'm looking to Dr. Harrison, making sure I'm right, we would not reduce the current allotment of seats from Irmo and Dutch Fork to Spring Hill. We would only be increasing the number of Chapin High School zone students into Spring Hill by having that Spring Hill Middle program that feeds into it. Dr. Harris, is there anything I missed there?
No, I think you described it accurately. The goal is to give some breathing room, if you will, to the Chapin High School.
And I assume if those seats go unused for a Chapin student, it would be opened up to the rest of the district?
Correct, and what we're looking at now, looking at the numbers, you will see this year, there are more Chapin students at Spring Hill. So our plan is by creating that sub-feeder at at Spring Hill Middle, that we would have that reduction there at Chapin High School. So that's the plan to build out, speaking with Dr. Lofton, and again, that would be Ms. Huckabee. They're already kind of drafting ideas of how that would look, and then if this plan moves forward, we would go forward and actually roll that out.
Mr. Scully?
Yeah, Ms. Miller, just going back to follow up on Ms. Huddle's question, if I heard you correctly, you said you attribute the increase in the MAP scores to Dreambox in elementary school. I know it's been a recent discussion as far as the Chromebooks. Dreambox is a digital program, correct? Is that increase due to in-class learning or out-of-school, after-school learning?
So we actually use both ways in the elementary school. Excuse me. Excuse me. And I do want to be clear that the Dreambox Learning is just one of the answers for that, the tools that our teachers are using that we are seeing great success. But it is both. Some of our teachers use it during class time, and some of them use it outside of class time. So we do see both.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Satterfield?
Wrong button. Dr. Ross, I was looking at the schematic there for the feeder system, and I know by proximity it all lines up, the closest elementary schools to the closest middle school. The numbers with the size of the facilities, in other words, the elementary feeders into Dutch Fork and Irmo High School both have 3, or excuse me, one's got 6, I guess. But a lot more elementary schools are feeding. Are those elementary schools that much smaller that it sort of fits inside that box with regards to the size of in other words, looking at Chapin High School, you've got Piney Woods, Chapin Elementary, Lake Murray and Ballantyne. And then Dutch Fork High School, you've got H.E. Corley, Dutch Fork, River Springs, da-da-da-da. Have you all looked at all the numbers to make sure that, I mean, we won't throw too many kids? I mean, I know because some of the schools, like Crossroads Middle School, is not a really large school. I know that Chapin Middle's been expanded, I think maybe twice. But y'all have looked at all those numbers to make sure that that feeder feeds adequately, and then there's room for growth for some of those schools?
Dr. Harris?
Does that make, is my question clear? In other words, it all lines up with regards to neighborhoods and busing and all that, but I would hate to all of a sudden halfway through say, well, yeah, some of these kids are going to have to go to Dutch Fork High School or Dutch Fork Middle School.
Yes, sir, Mr. Satterfield. I do think I received your question well. It is an attempt to strike as close to a balance as we possibly can with the schools that we've mentioned here. It's not a perfect balance, and we know that, but it is as close to a good and fair, reasonable balance as we possibly can get it.
Well, I was going to say, I really like that, the way it's structured, and I've expressed this before about going back to the K through 5, 6, 7, and 8, and so that teachers can collaborate. You know, elementary school teachers know where their kids are going, and the middle school teachers know where their kids are going, so they can have more collaboration. I think that'll really help our scores across the board. But I was just curious about the numbers. If you all, other than lining it up and schematically looking good, if we've got, we're going to be sure that Chapin Middle and Spring Hill Middle and Dutch Fork Middle, they can all handle the numbers from each of those elementary schools. No, good. Thank you.
Any more questions, Ms. Barnhart?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the slide on the weekly graduation rate report. And I remember the last time we spoke about it, about the tableau reporting and the change in the reporting system, that was what the change was in that week of the sharp drop right there. Could we explain that just a little bit more? Go a little bit more depth?
Dr. Holden, you want to explain what your program has contributed?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So what we've done over the last year is we've met with high school principals, school counselors, registrars, looked at board policy, and looked at the Education Oversight Committee's upcoming on-time graduation rate metric. And we spent 3 or 4 months defining what does on-track or on-time graduation look like here in School District 5, based on those definitions that were in place at the school level, as well as the board policy, as well as Education Oversight Committee's upcoming definition. We spent some time drafting that, looking at different pieces of it, looking at grades, for example, enrollment. What must a student be enrolled in to be considered on time? What courses? How many credits should that line up to? What should their attendance be? Because as Dr. Ross has mentioned, seat time requirements for Carnegie Unit courses. Looking at, are they in the correct grade level? So have they already met the promotion requirements we'd expect to see? Are they passing the courses required for graduation? Not just the courses they're in, but the courses that are required for graduation. So we worked with principals, assistant principals for instruction, school counselors, director of school counseling to establish those definitions. And then we spent a few months building a dashboard that would go through all of our data on a nightly basis and look at each student and determine, number 1, are they on diploma track? Number 2, are they in the correct grade level? Number 3, are they in the courses required for graduation? So 9GR20, which is our students who are in their 4th year of high school, 21, 22, and 23, 9GR23s being our first-time freshmen. Are they in the courses they would need for this year to be considered on track? Then we look at beyond that, are they passing those courses? So not if are they passing 8 courses for 8 credits, but are they passing the courses required for graduation? And we set a clear definition for what those courses were based on the specific grade level in 9GR. Then beyond that, are they on track to meet seat time requirements? Now, what happens here is, of course, and we've mentioned this, and Ms. Miller mentioned it too, we have recapture coming up at several of our high schools. I saw an advertisement for one of our schools offering recapture just last week because what students need to do as they miss too many days, they need to come in and recapture that, meet the state regulations and state guidelines for those pieces as well to ensure they've met their seat time requirements for those courses. And then we ultimately look at a few other factors that are warning signs for us as well. But as Dr. Ross very helpfully broke down for us, where we're seeing our current issues in the 9GR20 are with students' attendance, and then with students' grades in those courses. The reality is, of course, every school knows which students to focus on, which students need those direct intervention services, and they can tailor those interventions over the next 27 days, whether it's ensuring those students attend recapture, assuming those students are present every day that's remaining in the course, and ensuring those students are attending optional or required times with their teachers to ensure they're mastering the content, so they end up getting the grade that reflects that mastery of the content, mastery of the grade level standards. So it's a variety of pieces that have gone into it, and we kind of look through each one, and then on a nightly basis, if the student has met those criteria, we adjust that. In addition, it looks at which students are included in the cohort and not. If you went back to the enriched slide, you can see there's like 1,400 students in the graduation cohort, right, for the CCR data. Well, there's not 1,400 students who are going to be in the graduation cohort. And so what we're doing on a daily process at the school level is working with registrars, school counselors, administrators. They are constantly in contact with students who have left us but not enrolled elsewhere, students who have not already graduated, to ensure that if they need to come out of our graduation cohort, because they are enrolled in an alternative program somewhere else or enrolled in a school elsewhere in our state, that they are out of our graduation rate cohort. So it's a combination of factors. You can't see some of those things that are occurring in our Tableau report, but that was written specifically for District 5 by our staff, by Brian Cope, and our team worked on that with the schools to ensure we had something that reflected what we've felt was on time, and to ensure the data was accurate and consistently pulled across all schools.
I mean, you know, without this, we would be reporting 88%. So this gives us, if you just take a rough number of the number of students failing, which is 171 over the cohort, that'd be 12%. So we would be reporting 88% on track. But now that we have all of this other data, we see there's other risk factors, and like attendance. So these are kids that have A's and B's, but they're at risk because they haven't had attendance. So what has been, this really gives us some good data on the status of our students.
Ms. Huddle, did you have a question?
I did. And I know we're flipping back and forth between
that's
different
fine. Thank you,
subjects, so I
Dr. Hogan.
apologize. Back to the draft 3, and actually the slide where it showed the Dutch Fork going from 38%, if you go to the next one, to 29%, and you said moving the line. And now if you go look at the schools, this kind of goes on to Mr. Satterfield's question, I think, is we don't have, I don't think, the population study yet, correct? So when do we expect to get that, and how might it change this?
Great question. So our goal is to give, and we call this a plan, but it's really our philosophy. And so the goal is to overlay building quality, the community, our roads, the community impact study, those 5 things that we talked about in our plan, overlay this over the philosophy. And so that would include the enrollment projections as well. So when we would come back, it really gives the A&E team and the Department of Student Services Planning, there could be infinite amount of ways we do this. This gives them the first philosophy on how to implement it.
Well, and I guess one thing I don't understand is I know we're talking about using the Ballantyne Elementary School the way it is, but it seems like, if anything, this will just push even more to Chapin, because now you've got 100% of Ballantyne Elementary going to Chapin, and right now you don't.
Right.
So I just wonder if we're really, if this really does what the objective was, which I thought was maybe to push a little bit more toward Dutch Fork. It seems to me like it might be doing the opposite. So I'll just put that out there. And then the other thing is, I don't know what the enrollment projections are going to show, but there's a bunch of housing developments going in the Chapin Elementary attendance area. And I don't know how we're going to maintain this without potentially moving lines between elementary schools.
I'm glad you brought that up. I want to be very clear about what this is proposing. It does look like it is, it's really pushing out to the west. What I would, and Dr. Harris, you correct me where I'm wrong here, but we're currently in this theoretically serving 3 current school populations with 4 buildings. The space that we have in Dutch Fork, specifically River Springs, is where a lot of the current Ballantyne students will be going. So they're pushing really east. We're pushing eastward. You're just bringing the levels down of Piney Woods, Lake Murray, and Chapin. You're bringing those down because we're using the Ballantyne building to serve those three populations.
But they'll still end up in the high school, I guess is where I was
So,
headed.
correct. So going to the high school, our goal is by emptying Spring Hill of the Academy for Success. We believe that with the Spring Hill Middle School model, that we would have a current flow of, and our estimates are between 170, 200 a year that are going into Spring Hill, filling in that space there from Chapin, without increasing. So this would be no increase to the current Dutch Fork and Irmo populations, but it would be increasing the number from the Spring Hill Middle into Spring Hill High. So that's the goal, to stabilize it. But as was said, we have to put the numbers to it. So this is the philosophy that we're going to build around.
Mr. Satterfield, I saw your hand up.
When Dr. Harris nods, I believe that.
And I, this, again, piggybacks on that, piggy bank, that's money, isn't it? It kind of goes together. But I know that when I visited Spring Hill, they said they used a lottery system, and they had a pretty good spread with regards to the students' percentages and stuff, but it could be very interesting. I mean, you hope that certain kids, you hope that they will gravitate toward that. And it's a great school, by the way. If anybody goes to Spring Hill, it's a great school. I really enjoyed my visit there. But do you think there'll come a time where we have to say?
So there's just kind of this natural straightening of the line. We know that will come. I don't see it in the next 5-year plan, but I do see a future where we will have to talk about the fourth cluster.
How full is Spring Hill now? Do you know? I mean, if Chapin is pretty max right now, correct?
The capacity, Mr. Wiseman, 1,700 of Spring Hill High School. Around that area, we're at we cap it at about 1,200 max right now. Right.
So is it at max population right now?
No, sir.
So we still got plenty of growth out there?
We would calculate. We don't like to take things to 100% capacity.
Right, sure.
But we feel. What would you say, Dr. Harris?
We're not at capacity. I'll start there. I don't have a percentage as to what I can give you just a second in terms of its actual capacity, but I know there is still room and opportunity to expand and to do exactly what this plan is suggesting. And I think that would be a fair and reasonable approach to filling in those available spaces in Spring Hill High School.
Well, I agree with Ms. Huddle. We'd be foolish not to expect that there's not going to be more growth out there.
Right.
That's just where everything is growing and going up, so.
We've also, we have a, break the glass plan. As that rate goes up and we feel like we can't handle that within the 5 years, then we would come to the board in annual maintenance to slowly build out athletic packages and all the things in the high school. We know trying to do that in 1 year is cost prohibitive, so this plan allows the great magnet model that we have at Spring Hill to sustain, and also allows us to almost build one as a feeder at the proposed Spring Hill Middle School. And that also will let us know if you're in that Spring Hill Middle School magnet model, if that's empty, then we can say, all right, we have 2 years to make a decision, or 3 years to make a decision. But if that's full, we can assume that, all right, we have leeway. So that really gives us a 3-year lead on if we have to make some emergency shifts in this plan.
Any more questions for Dr. Ross?
And Dr. Ross, if I can offer this one question, just to answer Mr. Satterfield's question, I'm getting others who are online helping us out with this a little bit. We're currently about 75% capacity at our Spring Hill High Schools. I think that gives the number that I did not have on top of my head.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm really hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that our enrollment grows at our Kate Center too, and that would help alleviate some of that as well.
That's correct, and we're excited. We met with Charities, who's here, Ms. Simmons, and talked about in our instructional plan that we're also putting a part of our 5-year plan. May 8th, we're going to be talking about technology in the classroom and new initiatives that we have to drive for the future, what our students need in the future. So we're excited about that. One thing I do point out, and I'm very hopeful, and was said earlier, is that moving to this philosophy, I want us to look at how much systematically we'll gain at the middle level in terms of PD, resource allocations, sharing of information. Right now, all 5 of them operate differently. And we're seeing a lot of growth in elementary because of how we can support those schools. Right now, you have 5 different models of middle level. To bring that to one model allows more systematic growth PD changes, and I think that will also kind of clear up the academic issues that we're seeing there. So we look forward to putting in our next presentation of this more detailed numbers, but want to present it in the superintendent's report first.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Thank you. All right, and that concludes the superintendent's report.